You know how the argument is that like because gender identity is a social construct and we can't really figure out, like scientifically you can't break it down. That's kind of the argument that people say. So you can identify as a male if you're a biological, or you can identify as a man if you're a female, and vice versa. You know that argument? I've had the thought that if it's just social construction, why do we give primacy of the person we're talking about, the subject, their personal self-identification versus mine? So if I identify them as a male, or a man rather, and because they're biologically a man and they're like, no, I'm a female or I'm a woman, like them arguing you're misgendering me, I would say, look, biology, or it's gender is a social construct. I can define you as I want to. Brenda, what do you think about that?
But nobody goes as far as that.
I mean, there's probably the question is not epistemological, right? It's just kind of normative, right? When I think the argument that they put forth is something like, look, you can call me X, and you can be you're not going to be irrational, but I don't want to be called X. I want to be called Y, and I think that it'd be best, or it would be it'd be more harmonious for you just to.
So they're not making a truth claim.
What?
So they're not making a truth claim. They're just saying that, like, this is just what I want.
Well, yeah,
it seems like they're saying they actually are.
If they say that their gender identity is X, then they're making a truth claim. If they're saying I would like you to call me X, then they're saying I would like you to call me X.
Okay, but like
particular statement being addressed.
Okay, so it seems like there's two issues here. Number one is their gender identity is something, and the other one, like, it's obviously a truth claim that they identify as X, or they want to be called that, or whatever the hell, right? Right. That part I don't think is a dispute. But what I'm saying though is, okay, well then I also have a truth claim, which is that I see a male as a man, and why am I not given primacy? Why aren't they not told to respect my pronouns that I have with them?
The argument is something like they're the ones that have to live with this label. What they consider themselves is only like a passing irrelevance to you in your life, whereas whatever they're being consistently called by other people has a effect on them.
But at this point it's normative. At this point it's normative. We're talking about how I should call someone, right? And so it's not it's no longer an epistemic issue.
The second you tell me I should call you something, you're making a normative argument, right? It doesn't matter if there's some truth claim about what you are. Like, I'm a woman, I'm a man. Who the fuck cares?
Okay,
so you tell me I want to be called as a woman, you're making a normative argument. And there's going to be some claim like, well, if you value my happiness, for instance, or if you value me not killing myself or suffering from depression, then you ought to call me what I want to be called because it'll reduce the likelihood of those things. That would be an example.
So maybe if you had an issue doing that, why wouldn't you just not refer to them with gender pronouns at all? If you don't want to call them with
well, what I'm saying is it also causes me harm.
I don't have an issue with that at all.
Well, what if I claim that it causes me harm to call them by something I don't believe?
Then you don't call them anything. That's what I just said. Just call them by neutral fucking pronouns.
Well, then what if I argued though that like, see, by doing that though, I'm acquiescing to an ideology I don't agree with?
How are you acquiescing by just not referencing their gender at all?
Because I see them as a male and I'm having to deny what I see.
So every time you ever talk to somebody you see as a male, you have to refer to them with male pronouns and not just call them they.
Yeah, I mean, unless they're
strong emotional compulsion.
No, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the basis of. No, it's not. Listen, you misrepresented me. The basis of me calling them by gender-neutral pronouns is because of this idea or this theory that I don't agree with. That's the basis of it, right? Because they have their view, I have my view.
The basis is that you're trying to be civil and you're agreeing to disagree without causing disruption. That's the basis of doing it. Anyway,
I mean, I would say that the inclusion.
Have a nice day with your mental gymnastics.
Have a nice day too. I would say that the inclusion.
What would
the inclusion of that?
Nate, what would you call Claire, who you were just talking to?
That's confusing. I would call.
I mean, I don't know what Claire is, but I see Claire as a female.
What would you call her?
Just by looking at it.
Why would you say? Well, she's not.
I don't know. I mean, this is my first time hearing this.
She has a penis.
This is my first time hearing this. I didn't know that.
She has a. Yeah, she's a true hermaphrodite. She's a hermaphrodite.
I would give people who have like that, who have those types of intersex or hermaphrodite conditions, I would give them a pass, definitely.
Oh, then why do you don't give other people a pass?
Because they're biologically normal.
Fucking
Wait, hold on. What's the laugh there?
Yeah, I don't think that's
biologically
too
normal
ridiculous.
is funny.
But Farhan, you distinguish sex and gender, right? You see them as two different concepts.
I don't know that I do or not. I have to
Well,
think
so
about that.
let's
I
just take
understand the distinction,
Well, I'll help you.
but I don't know that I haven't. No, I understand the distinction, but I'm saying I don't know that I fully agree with it or not. Like the
Wait.
jury's still out on whether I accept it.
Well, I mean, it's either that you accept the distinction or you don't.
Right.
Or I don't know.
Okay, but, well, if you don't know, you don't accept it.
Exactly.
No, not necessarily.
Wait, it's a true dichotomy. It's either that you accept it or you do not accept it.
Right, and I haven't picked an option yet, right? That's also there.
Wait, look, if you don't know, you don't accept it. It's a true. It's either A or not A. Wait,
I mean,
you
okay, look,
deny the law of
listen,
excluded middle?
Danny, listen, we're getting into semantics. I think you understand
Of course it's
what I mean,
semantics.
right?
I hate when people look. If it's an argument, of course it's semantics.
Right. What I'm saying though is that it's an interesting theory. I haven't really concluded whether
So
I
you don't
agree.
accept it.
So you don't accept it.
All right, sure, let's go with it. When I'm thinking, listen. When I hear, listen, really quickly, Pogan, really quickly. When I hear you don't accept, I mean I'm hearing. Listen, again, this is semantics. I did not mean to divulge into a semantic conversation, but when I hear don't accept, I'm thinking reject. Now I know you don't. That's not what you mean by that, but that's just what I was thinking when you were saying that.
Okay,
So I'm just saying I failed to accept it. I mean, I'm not trying to have some technical conversation with you. I'm trying to have.
You don't think this is very technical? The
I'm trying to
distinction
have
between
a general
the distinction
conversation about
between-
ideas.
You bring this up in the first place.
yeah, it's very technical. Like the idea of
No,
to differentiate sex and gender is very technical. If you're not incapable of a technical conversation, don't participate.
No, I don't agree with that at all. I don't agree with that at all. Because you're basically saying like colloquial speech is not the way we should generally talk. Like I'm
Wait.
trying to have a colloquial general conversation and you're trying to
Colloquial. If we're talking about a technical issue of sex and gender, right? Then why would you bring colloquialism up?
Well, why would you start to like flip the script on me when I'm clearly using one form of speech and then suddenly
what
you're
word
getting
were you
into,
using colloquially?
I got a better idea.
No, because you said you were going colloquialism.
I've got a better idea.
Little boy, run away,
I've got a better
away.
Danny, I've got a better idea. How about this? If you say, for example, that I don't, I'll just grant you that I don't accept it, right? And that doesn't mean that I reject it. That just means I fail to accept it. How about that?
That's fine.
Okay, now continue. So continue where you're going.
I was gonna help. What helped me understand the distinction is if you take a male or someone with a penis, a normal biological male, and then a normal biological female. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And imagine the female being very hairy, muscular, deep voice. And then imagine the male having smooth skin, hairless, high-pitched voice, limp wrist, whatever.
Right.
Which would you say is more feminine?
Well, how do you define feminism?
We'll use your definition.
I mean, I don't know that I have a definition.
Well, you don't. Okay.
Well, hold on a second. Right. Okay, so now you're asking me for. You just went into this whole thing about colloquialism, right? I'm saying, so let's get a technical definition. What is the definition of feminism?
I'll just accept yours.
We're having a technical conversation, not my colloquial definition.
We're technically.
I'll tell you what, Danny, do this. Google feminine. I'll tell you, go ahead and do that.
Well,
Let's get the formal definition.
Well, off the top of my head, masculinity relates to being a man, and femininity relates to being a woman.
Okay, so then what does being a man mean in your definition?
Well, I'm asking you. I don't have trouble with the distinction.
Okay, I'll be what do they say? I'll be really autistic. I don't have a definition. So let's go with the dictionary. Here, someone just posted it right there.
Why would we talk
quality
about
of being
any of this?
The quality of being female, womanliness. Okay, now what does that mean in your eyes? In your view?
I'm asking you.
Well, I mean, I'm saying I don't have a definition, right? So we got to go by the dictionary.
Wait, so you have no grounds as to how to think of what's a feminine trait versus a masculine trait. Look, this seems dishonest. What do you think? A high-pitched voice? Look, you infer.
I mean, I'm going to speak colloquially, right? But we're not using. Didn't you just go on this whole dog and pony show about like?
I'm not using any word colloquially yet. Okay, look, this is what I'm asking.
And this will be
obviously
defined
you
in some way.
make inferences as to my gender or my sex or whatever you want to call it for right now, and as well as everyone else. So then if I came in here, oh hello, how are you doing? You know, if I had that kind of voice, okay, you would probably infer that I'm a what?
I don't know necessarily. I can't say from
Oh my
that.
god.
So okay, hold on,
Homosexual.
Danny. Basically, what you're saying, Danny, is this: you're saying that a certain frequency of voices is feminine. That's what you're saying,
Oh, look, this
right?
is what I'm trying
Okay,
to say.
no. Hold on a second.
That's not what he's saying, Farhan. He's asking you.
Look, the idea is
You're
this.
trying to get me
They're
to
going to
define
be a
a word,
subset
right?
of
And
traits.
that
I'm almost
therein
done.
lies the
I'm
problem.
really. It's not going to take
Go
very long.
ahead.
I'm going to do. There's a subset of traits that are generally associated with a kind of sex, and I would label those traits as either masculine or feminine, and, depending on what kind of sex it's referred to or associated with, right? So a high-pitched voice is generally a characteristic of a female, but not necessarily a characteristic of a female. So what happens as human beings, we see these commonalities, right? We see these common denominators that refer to a specific sex, and then we create a conception of what a particular trait is associated with. Okay?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm done. You can.
I thought you were done. Okay, you just said generally. That was your key word there, right? How
Yes,
can I
it is
use
general.
generally in a formal conversation with you?
Well, the thing is that there will be a fact of the matter as to what the majority thinks a particular trait belongs to. Okay, and that's to say, someone can say, look, generally, cats have fur.
Do you have
Okay,
data on this?
that's just to say, out of all the cats that exist, more cats are going to have fur than not. Well, they're hairless cats, though.
You have
Okay.
data on this?
On hairless.
No, that people say that high pitched voice, and you got to be specific. You can't just say high pitch, right? You got to say certain frequencies because high pitch is subjective.
You're just being dishonest.
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
No, I'm not being dishonest. I'm actually saying
This is the kill screen right now.
I'm not. I'm saying, okay, listen. You want to be very
Look,
specific in how you
Why
define
don't you
terms,
ask
right?
me data for?
Then when you ask me to define terms, then when you try to get into a conversation, you try to pin by my personal
Yeah, but
definition.
you don't actually have some sort of misunderstanding about what the
No, I completely understand what he's saying, right? But
Yeah,
I'm saying
that's why you're being dishonest.
Hold on a second, Tomber, you're not even in this conversation.
Well-
But the problem, Danny, that you're doing right now is you're relying on my subjective personal definition, and then
Yeah,
you're
that's
trying to have a
fine.
formal conversation.
I don't
with
think
that.
there's a problem with that.
That's
Okay,
not a
so-
problem, Farhan.
So then, by that definition, if I said I define feminine as a person who has female body parts, what if I were to say that? Right now, that would you could. By the way, I know you can get around that as well. But hypothetically, if I were to say that, if I said my definition of female, I mean, I can kind of give you.
Farhan,
what's
your point, man? What's your overall?
Look,
My point is that the moment he says generally, he's
I would say
invoking
So
a
what?
non-technical definition because
I
he's
would say
invoking a
women
non-technical
generally have
definition.
What's the problem?
vaginas. Yeah, women generally have vaginas.
Because I can't work with that. If you said something like,
What's-
"Hey, how much fluid is there?" Oh, there's a lot. Generally, a lot. Well, a lot in relative to what?
Wait,
You
no,
can't
no,
just
no,
say
look.
generally.
It's not as simple. Like it's not like a black or white situation as to how we can attribute traits. Think about the cat example. Do you agree that cats generally have fur?
Of course, generally,
So do you agree that women generally have vaginas?
yes.
Okay,
I
do you
agree,
agree
yes.
that women generally are shorter than men?
But I can't use generally as a definition. Why don't you understand that?
not?
Like,
No,
why is
that's
it?
just to say that more of those specimens have that trait than not. Okay, so that's to say, when I say a woman is generally shorter than 5'8", okay, that's to say out of all the women that I am going to see, over 50% of them are going to be below 5'8". Okay, that's empirical, and that's true. And I
Okay,
can still
so
use the
then
word
is your
generally.
definition? Okay, so is your definition of a woman who's generally below 5'8"? Is that your definition?
No, I think that's a trait that we associate to females.
Okay, so I don't care about this. You can't just say like, okay, here's an attribute. We just collectively pull them together. I'm saying that the moment you go into this world of generally, I lose you. You can't use that. You got to be more specific. You have to define your.
Wait, do you not understand the examples about the hairless cats and then the women like?
And do you not
women
see how?
generally having? Look, the point. Here's the point. I'll just get to the point since I can't do the line of questioning with you because it's like whatever. But the idea is this: when we look at femaleness and maleness, there are going to be certain traits there. Okay, now I pointed some of them out. Now you may not see those, but most human beings do see traits that are generally associated with males and traits that are generally associated with females. Now we socially construct or a kind of set of traits, and then as applied to a specific sex, and we call that a kind of gender. Okay, so the gender of and it's not going to be rigid, right? Because like you're saying, there is a problem. Well, I don't really consider it a problem. There is a kind of intersubjective agreement, or even subjective conception of these things. Okay, so it's my opinion, or it's my experience, that females typically exhibit the traits of having a high-pitched voice, being shorter than 5'8", having smooth skin, have long hair, right? And what happens with a transgender is that they desire to be like that, and so they try to acquire as many traits as possible in order to feel like in order to basically identify as that kind of gender. Okay, that's what's happening.
I understand that. Do you understand that there's a distinction between a generalization and a definition?
Well,
honestly, I think you're trying to fine tune on this distinction to get out of the main topic. Why don't you? Would
we do that in anything else?
He said a lot of stuff.
Let me repeat. Let me repeat what you said.
I'm hearing you tell us what you think a definition is. I'm hearing you engaging in the content of what Danny said.
Okay, listen, Danny. Let me repeat what you said. Joe, I heard what you said. Danny, let me repeat what you said so that you can see that I'm understanding what you're saying. You're saying that there's basically certain female characteristics that generally people define as female characteristics, and
yes.
People who are transgender, they say, okay, I'm a person and I want to acquire those characteristics through one way or the other, and I want to become that. And therefore I become that, essentially, right? I get that, right? And you're going to say, and here, I've had Jack walk me through this. Was it Jack? Or somebody, not Jack, it was, anyways, walk me through this before in the past. Basically what they say is that, well, if you have, for example, a male has, for example, certain characteristics. Well, what if there's a male that doesn't have those characteristics? Are they still a man? And therefore, well, now if they have all the characteristics of a woman, are they now a woman? That's essentially what you're saying. What I'm saying, though, is that the moment you mix together definitions and generalizations, I lose you.
I'm not really making a definition
let me just, I'm almost done. If I was to say, for example, okay, well, I'm going to get a little racist, right? But if I said, okay, black people, you know what? They're generally, they don't make as much money, and they generally have these like poor upbringings and what have you, and they generally live in bad neighborhoods and blah, blah, blah. So therefore, if a white person acquires those, does that person become a black person? Again, the moment you mix generalizations and definitions, I lose you. You can't do that.
Look, I'm not, the definition, I'll just define it. Oh, go ahead, Josh.
It's not like there's anything fucking mysterious here, right? Like, it's not like there's anything, like if you were walking down the street and you saw fucking Blair White, or if you were walking down the street and you saw Buck Angel, you'd call that motherfucker a man, and you wouldn't be wrong to do so. And if you saw Blair White, you'd call that motherfucker a woman, and you wouldn't be wrong to do so. I don't know what's fucking hard about this for you fucking idiots. Like, it's a real fucking simple concept. Listen, you'd have to give some sort of principled criterion, right, for people to modify their language in accordance with your norms. But you don't have any fucking principled criterion to do that, right? Like, imagine you woke up and you found out that your dad had XX chromosomes, and through some weird biological miracle you were born. Would your dad stop being a man? The answer is no. If you woke up and your dad got a fucking dick.
This is very simple. I agree. When I see a faggot like Brenda walking down the street, I'll call him a faggot.
What the hell?
Josh Ace. Go ahead, Josh.
Anyway, the point is that, like, look, you're importing a bunch of philosophical assumptions about the philosophy of language that you can't substantiate any of it, right? Like, you can't give a reason for someone to reform their concept of a woman just because it turns out that some women have XX chromosomes and some women don't, right? You can't give a good reason to say, oh, well, you ought to comport your concept of a woman to saying that women have XX chromosomes rather than just saying that some don't, right? You can't give a principled reason. All you can do is beg the question. So I don't know what the fuck is hard about this, right? It's very simple. Androgen and sensitive males were considered women before. You have to give them an argument to accept your reasons, but you don't have any kind of fucking argument. Right?
Actually, I would do the opposite. I would do the opposite. I would say the opposite. I would say you have to give me a reason.
So why don't you just use what comes natural to you? And when you see someone who looks like a woman, you call them a motherfucking woman, right? Instead of being a piece of shit.
Okay. So what happens if I see a person who's very clearly like transitioning, right? And I'm like, dude, this person is not, like, obviously, right, non-passing, as they say. Should I call that person as I see?
Passing is based on the general perception, though. Farhan, aren't you against that?
I mean, I don't know about the general perception. I'm talking about
what's
my
your definition of passing, right? You're not going to appeal to a generality, right,
no, hold on a second. So I've had a job where
what's
a person
the
clearly
definition
was
of
trying
passing,
to be...
Farhan? You're not going to appeal to a general perception, right?
1 second.
Hey, Tom, I guess I can hear you, but your mic's kind of off.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've worked with people who were male to female, and it was so obvious to me that they were just transitioning. And so when I see this person, I'm like, okay, I mean, out of politeness, I'll call them a female, or a woman rather. I use feminine pronouns. But what I'm saying though is that when I see them, I don't see a woman. I definitely see a guy with long hair.
Farhan, what made it obvious?
I'm not sure if I heard you right, but I don't think any of that answered my question. Did it?
Right. I also remember I was talking to what's his name.
Oh, I think everybody's
Danny
interested
earlier.
in hearing your answer.
Right. Everyone's. So, Danny, let me ask you a question. Do you see the distinction I'm making between generalization and definition?
Look, I wasn't making it. Yeah. Well, look, I know you're set on this, so I'm gonna clear it up.
I'm very set on this. Wait, let me just say one thing. Let me just say one thing, right? The act of defining or making something definite.
Look, I'm very familiar. Look, when I
the moment you say generalization, I keep losing you, and you keep steamrolling past that. I don't think that's fair.
So dishonest, man.
Okay, wait. Let me clear it up. A generalization is not a definition. That's correct. Definitions tend to be analytic. Okay. When I make a generalization, I'm making some kind of empirical claim, right? If I say water has the property of being, I don't know, freezing at 0 degrees Celsius, is that a definition? No, right? But it's still true, right? In the same way that if I say that, generally speaking, we attribute these kinds of traits to this kind of concept, okay, that's not a definition either. So when I'll give you the definition of, at least my definition of masculinity. That's or of a man. It's just being male. Now the question is, what does it mean to be male? And I think that that's highly problematic for those that want to say that there's a rigid criteria for being a male, because I don't think anyone can offer an argument for a set criteria, and that's what Josh was saying.
Right. I know your existentialism, I guess.
No, it's not nothing to do with it. I don't know. We don't need to bring existentialism, right? The idea it's actually not just a problem for gender. It's actually a problem in biology and taxonomy. Now,
no, I understand that. Listen,
right?
I get that. I've heard this argument for many years. I understand that. That wasn't my initial point, anyways.
Okay, so then you understand that the generalization definition distinction is not. It doesn't have any force.
Problem. No, it's a huge problem.
I can't believe it.
Because of what I've said the entire time. It's as if you're saying, here's what I'm hearing from you. You're saying, well, you know what? People would generally agree. Hold on, Danny.
Please?
Yeah, I'm going to. Danny, you're basically saying, and I got to step away in 3 minutes, but Danny, you're saying that water is, what's the definition of water? Well, it's wet. I know you just said the opposite, but this is exactly what you're saying. Well, since we don't have any other definition, let's just go with it's wet, it's clear, and a couple of, whatever the hell, it freezes at 0. These are qualities you're pointing out, and you're insisting.
It's not definition. Look,
I know it's not definition, but you are insisting on it. What do you not understand about this?
Look, very quick. Does water generally freeze at 0 degrees Celsius, or does it necessarily freeze at 0 degrees Celsius?
Generally, because
right? It's still true. It's still informative, and it's non-problematic to say when we're discussing how water is, right?
Because other liquids can freeze at 0 degrees. Other liquids could freeze at that temperature. If you adjust the pressure.
What is this guy talking about?
Well, nobody can hear you.
He's being dishonest, Vic.
Wait, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Danny, again, you're see.
What am I doing wrong, Farhan?
Let me use the example, okay? By the way, I have to leave like in 2 minutes. I apologize. I'm not trying to run away. I'm actually enjoying this conversation. But Danny, listen. I'm going to say something, and then you're going to respond. I'm going to listen to what you say, and then I got to go. How about that?
Okay, that's fine. That's fair.
Okay. All right. Okay. So what I'm saying is that water freezes at 0 degrees, right? Now, depending on the pressure, you could have a different environment. I could be wrong about this, but my understanding is that depending on the pressure, liquids freeze at different temperatures. So if you go to, for example, Mars or whatever the hell, right, and you freeze mercury at 0 degrees, right? Now you're saying, well, water is defined as this. Okay, so if a liquid acquires as many qualities as it can of freeze that are in common with water, therefore it becomes water. That's what I'm hearing you saying.
No, I'm not. When I say I'm not giving a definition. Look, if I'm not saying water is whatever freezes 0 degrees Celsius, I'm saying that that's a property of it, right? And that's not a definition. That's just a predication. It's not an identity claim. That is.
I mean, right. I want to respond, but I said I wasn't going to. But I'm listening.
I mean, if you have time, I understand. I know you have to go soon, so you can just leave when you need to. But the idea is that when you say definition, I'm thinking identity claim, right? Water is H2O is, I think, an identity claim. That might be what you're talking about, but I'm giving a predication of femininity or masculinity, right? That typically most people, or generally speaking, most people associate tallness with being male. That's to say masculinity.
You're defining. I said I was going to respond, but you're defining a term by its predications.
I'm not making a definite. I'm not giving. What do you take a definition to be an identity claim? Yes or no?
I guess so. Yeah.
Okay. So, do you think it's an identity claim when I say water has the property of freezing at 0 degrees Celsius in certain situations?
Say that one more time. I apologize. I just read something.
Do you think it's an identity claim that when I say water freezes at 0 degrees Celsius at certain in certain
No, I
cases?
don't think so.
Okay, so in the same way, I'm not giving you a definition. I'll give you a definition of masculinity, for instance, and then I'll tell you the problem in terms of this whole dialectic. I'll just define masculinity as being male. Now the question is, being male. The criteria for being male is not rigid. We would have to point to certain generalizations. Okay? It's not going to be rigid. It's going to be, I think, more mind-dependent than anything else.
I'm listening. I have to go, but continue.
Well, no, I mean, that's all I have to say. When I say, generally speaking, tallness is associated with being masculine, or being male or masculinity, then I'm not giving an identity claim. I'm just giving a kind of empirical observation or kind of a property to a thing. Okay.
You're done, Zach.
You have to
Farhan.
go.
Farhan, you're done.
Danny, let's talk another time.
Fuck up, tasteless.
We can't.
Jesus.
Farhan was headshot as soon as he was using the word passable, which is defined in terms of a generality.
Right.
But there's a difference between water and masculinity.